If you don't know what the Dame Edna Everage line was about, it was the somewhat improbable comments from Kemi Badenoch on at a podcast recording the other night that she's getting much better at PMQs. And that she's more like a dame now. So that's why Gerard went for Dame Edna Average, a pantomime dame. And I don't think even critics of her would have expected her to make the same boast at the actual dispatch box.
Also, setting a bit of a rod of her own back there to say, I'm getting better and better every week.
Better every week. I mean, I'm a pretty arrogant man. You've probably not noticed this, Natasha.
I haven't noticed it at all.
During our brief collaboration, but I'm getting better every week.
Yeah.
Nobody says that out loud.
That?
Nobody says that out loud.
You're setting yourself up for a huge fall when eventually you have a shocker at Prime Minister's Questions, and which he has had some shockers.
Mike says, "What's at?" The mind boggles, Michael. The mind boggles.
Despite the fact it being a bit of a shopping trolley of a Prime Minister's Questions with questions all over the place. Actually, so talking about national insurance, the economy, unfunded spending cuts, when to fuel. She called it the terrible Chagos deal. He said, accusing him of not having properly stabilised the economy and blowing a black hole in the spending plans with their U-turn, which they've not said how they'll pay for. I thought actually it wasn't too bad of a showing from Kemi Badenoch, but for one reason really, I just don't think she's as rattled by him as she has been in the past, and I think she's keeping her cool a bit better. It's clear that both of them get under each other's skin.
Yes.
Both Kemi Kemi Badenoch under Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer under Kemi Badenoch. They both, I think, really don't particularly like each other, and they know how to get to each other. But actually, I thought you saw enough animation, passion, and good arguments from both of them that actually, I thought it was an all right performance from Kemi Badenoch. But Keir Starmer, she just can't get anywhere near the goal, can she? She can't actually get any knockout blows because he is very, very good at Prime Minister's Questions these days.
He gets better every week.
He gets better every week, yeah.
23
he wasn't very good at Prime Minister's Questions at one point when he first became leader.
I don't know that he's that good now, but it depends what you're up against, doesn't it? As I think someone just reminded us, my kids are getting better at their Sunday football matches every week, says Connor, which means you might have gone from losing 28-0 to losing 16-0. And technically you have got better. I thought the Liz Truss stuff was interesting because we took a call from Kaz in Ross-on-Wye, who was literally rendered homeless by Liz Truss. The interest rate rise that her landlord had to absorb saw him issue a Section 21, albeit with 6 months' notice, because he couldn't afford to keep paying the mortgage on the property that she rented from him, so she was evicted and she ended up homeless as a direct consequence of Liz Truss's fiscal event. So it seems to me that she's on a bit of a hiding to nothing when A, she says he doesn't talk about his own record when he's just spent most of the last answer talking about his own record, and B, why wouldn't a Labour leader not remind voters of what happens when the Tories are in power? Yeah,
I mean, look, we are going to be hearing that argument until the cows come home in the next 4 years. And Keir Starmer will want to link Kemi Badenoch to Liz Truss at every opportunity he can get. And actually, what we've seen in the last few weeks with his shift towards doing that for reform as well, accusing both of them of, fancy economics, the sums don't add up. It's a really interesting position for the Labour Party to be in because, 4 years ago, that was exactly what everybody was saying about Jeremy Corbyn. Just before Keir Starmer became leader, everybody said his sums didn't add up. So it's a really interesting message, and I think it does resonate with voters. We know that, time in time, day in, day out, look at the polling, and people want to see a government that they feel handles the economy well. I don't think people can say that Labour are the economy is fantastic at the moment, that nobody's feeling better off right now. But actually, Keir Starmer's trying to say things are more stable than they were a year ago under the Conservatives. I think most people probably will agree with that things do feel a bit more stable. Are things all done, the land of milk and honey hasn't quite materialised yet. And I think that's going to be his really tricky moment today when the Chancellor gets up to announce her spending review. She's got to sort of allude to the fact that things are getting better, that there is this hope on the horizon and that this change that everybody, voted for in the election is actually going to come. But with the economy still stumbling, with growth still slow, with inflation still sticky, it's going to be a really, really hard sell to actually say to voters, things are going to get better, trust us.
And tariff on the horizon and the unreliability of Trump and the rest of it. There's not a lot to bet on, is there, from the government's point of view? Shall I read out some texts? Randomly, this from Isaac. Oh, my lordy, there's been nothing quite so funny this year as Badenoch claiming I'm getting better every week. Chris writes, I'm getting better, and then does an emoji and writes, actually howled. Andrew writes, every week we have to listen to her practicing for a job she already has. Alan points out, Richard Bergen rattled Starmer more than Kemi Badenoch did. We should probably mention that. Bergen very much from the left of the party, going after the plans to review PIP and disability payments.
Yeah, that's probably the most interesting part of PMQs today, actually. Richard Bergen, who, of course, from the left of the Labour Party, like you say, pressing the Prime Minister to go even further. And that's what happens when you, as a government, announce a U-turn. Backbenchers start getting a little bit confident with what else can we get. Yeah. And, of course, the disability benefits cuts, the welfare changes, that is going to be a lot for a lot of MPs to swallow. And the two-child benefit cap is something that a lot of Labour MPs privately behind the scenes want to see go as well. So is there more potentially of this to come, of this change in direction? I think probably.
Steve in Guildford writes, Starmer was second best today, best at deflecting embarrassing questions. And Tony, I am loving Keir Starmer today, and I want to know who's convincing Kemi Badenoch that she's getting better. Lol. The only thing I would wish is that the government stops saying that the U-turn is down to the economy.
It's just not.
It's irrelevant. It's relevant because it was the right thing to do regardless. I would respect a PM more who just changes their mind. It's a strength.
That is the problem, is that they're saying, well, the economy is looking better, that's why we've got the money, but they've still not said how they're going to pay for this, which is a problem when you're blaming Liz Truss, when you're blaming the Conservatives and Reform for not having their spending plans add up. If yours don't add up, if you don't say how you're going to pay for this £1.5 billion promise, it looks a bit of an own goal, really. So I don't think it works, and that's probably going to, I think, time in knots until we get to the budget.
Will there be any surprises? Will Rachel Reeves be pulling any rabbits out of her hat in the next half an hour? Yes?
I think she'll want to. We've seen the pitch rolling for this spending review for weeks, really, haven't we? We saw the Chancellor's speech last week where she was talking about spending lots of money in the north, infrastructure projects, £100 billion that she's borrowed thanks to loosening up her fiscal rules. She wants to offer some freebies, some sweeties, and to tell people that the economy is getting better. She needs to show it. She needs to show what she's doing. And look, this isn't a budget. It's no tax and spend decision, so there's not a lot she can do. But, we saw with what the Treasury are talking about this morning with more affordable housing, the bus cap fare is being extended. Those are the little things that really do kind of make a difference, I think, in people's lives. So I'm sure she will want to throw to some sort of rabbit.
We shall see. And sooner rather than later, I think we will not be taking the news bulletin at 12:30, which frees me to cross immediately back to the House of Commons as soon as Rachel Reeves gets to her feet, which puts us in that very popular position now of having to fill space constructively.
We haven't talked about your
Ed Davey.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was what you were going to say. I'm running out of things to talk about. Davey, talking about Israel sanctions, rightly, where Kemi Badenoch didn't decide to go.
I don't think there's enough support for criticism behind her
you
on
don't?
the Tory, not on this very specific moment.
Of Israeli sanctions, or specifically the issue around it? These two men.
I don't think anyone would say that they don't deserve to be sanctioned. You can make a slightly Byzantine argument about the need for keeping diplomatic relations sweet or keeping the White House sweet, but Smotrich and the other one, Ben-Gvir, have such hideous records that you would struggle, I think, to set yourself up as a defender of their honour.
And nobody I've seen in the past 24 hours has done that.
Exactly.
I think the argument is, why are you sanctioning a government which you say is an ally of the United Kingdom? That's the problem. It's not something that the UK government can't quite square the circle of. You see, when we sanction Russian politicians, the government is happy to make the argument that the entire government, the entire administration is in the wrong. But we are moving towards that. The government has come leaps and bounds in changing their position in the past few weeks. And Ed Davey saying the government was right to act, and I back you.
And warm as well, Ed Davey. I need, wishing him a happy birthday, I think, is just basic good manners. But
I was mean about him off air, wasn't I?
But there's a warmth there that is absent from other parts of PMQs, and was certainly absent when the SNP got the third question.
Definitely. The SNP had a very harsh demeanour at Prime Minister's questions, and they really wanted to.
That's not a criticism.
No, not at all. Yeah. Just I think they were just as a party, as the Westminster leaders were more blunt, I think, in trying to differentiate themselves. And Ed Davey is happy, and I think people do respect, I think, the fact from Ed Davey that he is happy to say to the government when they've got things right. And actually, I think most people do quite like it when that happens. We were right to suggest that he talked about social care, and that is going to be a big question, I think, for after the spending review. We still don't have any sort of cross-party consensus on what a social care plan looks like. Wes Streeting has promised this time and time again. The last government promised it time and time again. It's just been kicked into the long grass. It's so expensive. That's why the government don't want to sort of grasp the nettle on this. Ed Davey saying, look, we cannot fix the NHS, we cannot fix our health service without looking at social care. It's on its knees, make it a priority. But I didn't hear anything from Keir Starmer today, which seemed to indicate that that's on the cards.